Hello, I'm Phil Svitek, 360 Creative Coach, and welcome to this edition of my vlog, where I highlight my creative journey and extract the various things that I've learned along the way, as well as highlight the things that I knew beforehand that I'm applying as I traverse the various things that I'm going through in my creativity as well as in life. And in an effort to keep this less about the coronavirus, I've decided to kind of focus more on the creative side of things. And in fact, that's pretty much what I tried to do last week. As much as I could, I wanted to stay informed and be in the know, but I also wanted to put myself mentally in a place of, okay, there's not much I can do about X, Y, and Z, so let me focus on what I can do. And, part of that was the creative output I've had. And so, part of your output is always about your input. And what I mean by this is that the various media that I did consume was much more regimented. I stayed off social media for the most part as much as I could. And I watched movies. Some were mindless entertainment like Scoob, but then I also got into classic movies that I've been wanting to kind of catch up on. So like film noir. I love film noir. And though I've seen like Sunset Boulevard, Maltese Falcon, The Big Sleep, and things like that, there's obviously a lot that I haven't yet seen. And so in a Lonely Place, that was one. It's a Humphrey Bogart movie that I saw. Also Double Indemnity. That's fantastic. Now, I've seen that years prior, but I'm just bringing it up as a recommendation. And it was kind of fun, what's kind of fun about that, like once you kind of deep dive, I posted on Instagram of like, hey, trying to get back into film noir. If anyone has recommendations, please let me know. And, it's always very surprising who responds to what, because the influx of recommendations that I gotten from the people that I got them from, it was very surprising in a number of ways, but the recommendations were fantastic. And some were like very classic movies, like A Streetcar Named Desire, and then more modern ones like Motherless Brooklyn, which is the Ed Norton one. I have not seen that one yet, so I did get a good collection of things to put on my queue essentially, and I'm looking forward to deep diving those. But in that same vein, going back to the initial thought of it, like these are the various media forms that I was ingesting, so that way like I could kind of position myself and dictate, again, the kind of, just for lack of a better term, the things that I was consuming. Like I wanted to be in control versus being bombarded, as I kind of put myself in with social media, where like things were just kind of come at me. So I wanted to control what I consumed. I wanted to be in control of, therefore I could control my output a little bit easier. And to that point, as far as like the creative aspects of everything, it was all about breaking things down into their simplest form. When you kind of feel stuck, you really just kind of have to go for the milestone victories. If you're going for like a marathon, let's say, like you want to run a marathon, well, your first thing shouldn't be to run 26 miles if you've never run a day in your life, right? This is just hypothetical in that sense, but also / practical. Instead be like, okay, I want to run to the end of the block, and then the next day, okay, maybe you run 2 blocks, 3 blocks, 4 blocks, 5 blocks, whatever, right? You continually keep increasing it, right? So you want to break things down into smaller, more tangible things that you can actually attain. And so that's how I approached last week. And, so I broke down what I always keep kind of a to-do list, but I created a master, what I needed to complete, what I like, and when I say needed, I mean for me mostly of like what I wanted to complete for myself, so that way this week was a success. And I kept it down to, just the core items. So on there was, I wanted to work on my film, and more specifically the film sound. I wanted to work on a script, and I wanted to send out query letters for my novel. So those are the things creatively that I focused on, right? So as far as the film, the biggest kind of thing that we're facing in terms of the sound is the dialogue, right? Which is a huge component of it. and we had done ADR for a good chunk of it. But it's like, how do you match certain things? And so we had to get kind of creative to make sure that things didn't seem out of place. And I actually had called up, I called up John Comerford, Courtney Stewart, Ian Kaiser, and who are the producers of the movie, and we all kind of talked about, okay, how do we tackle this? And part of the first question was, well, how far off are we? It's when you kind of give notes, it can become very nebulous of like, okay, ADR feels off. And it's like, well, does it feel off by 5% or 50%, right? And so you have to kind of be very specific in terms of how you approach it. And so they allowed me to gain a better understanding of where we're at and how to kind of approach it. And one of the things, it was also kind of a sanity check where it was like, okay, right now, no one is certain of anything. And so, like, who knows when we could go into an actual sound place and redo some of the stuff that we might need to redo or whatever else, right? Like, everyone's working from home, and so, even my sound mixer, and designer, he's working from his home, and so, he doesn't have the luxury of the studio that he normally would, and so forth. So we're all making do with what we got. And so the notion was, let's just, let's put our best foot forward with this. Let's really go for it. And then if in the future, we have the opportunity to kind of go back in and fix certain things that we think we can enhance, we'll do that. But let's not bank on it. Let's instead just utilize what we have and go for it. And I think that's a good way to do it. I think, will there be shortcomings in this process? Absolutely. But I think, it's interesting to me, like, having looked at, going back to the first thing, and looked at film noir and things like that, classic movies, you can definitely tell glitches here and there, and, they're very minor and things like that, and yet they're considered masterpieces, right? And I think too often we get down on the imperfections in the various things, when in reality, oftentimes, the imperfections that we think are there actually end up being the parts that people love. Now, I'm not saying that you should just say, F it, I'm not gonna worry about X, Y, and Z, I'm not gonna, whatever, it sounds like shit, and I'm not gonna worry about it. That's not what I'm saying. You still wanna put your best foot forward and things like that, but I don't know, I think it's very surprising, to this day, as much as we try to think we understand audiences and what they'll gravitate towards, it's just not the case. All you can do, and this is like the thing that, if anything, COVID-19 has taught us, is the only thing that you can control is yourself. And in terms of the creative aspects, that is the only thing that you can control. You got to put your best foot forward, but how it is received and so forth is completely out of control. It's a very Stephen Pressfield type of notion of, like, you are entitled to the fruits of you are entitled to your labor, but not the fruits of your labor. That's from The War of Art. Other great books of his are like Do the Work, things of that nature. But anyway, so as far as the ADR, like, one of the things that we decided upon was one of the actresses, in terms of the ADR, it comes off very tingy and very high pitched. And part of that's her natural voice. But in terms of the space that we're trying to replicate, it feels very distant. And so we said, okay, lower her as much as we can, and that'll help it seem like it is of that space. And so we'll see, how that goes. Now, part of it is I don't know what the end result of that will be, because my goal right now is to get to a full pass of the movie. And it's for a number of reasons. Number one, there's a couple of deadlines that are approaching as far as film festivals that I want to utilize this sound pass for, even if it's not perfect. It's going to be far better than what we had before. So there's that, and I don't want to and I also want to kind of see things in the larger context of things, right? And so we can go back in and address certain notes later, right? So that's why I don't know exactly how that note is going to actually work, but it feels like that's going to work because through no fault of her own, she's the one that we keep getting, as far as people watching it, she's the one whose ADR seems too off-putting. Like it feels very different than everything else. So we'll see. The other kind of thing that I had done, not purposefully, but just because of the circumstances and the resources that I had, was that I recorded the ADR in my own apartment. And my apartment, whatever place you kind of record at has its own room tone, right? And that's tricky because when you're trying to match room tone to something else, if there's already room tone built in, it's very tricky, right? Hence why they record voiceovers and ADR in essentially soundproof rooms, so that way you can shape it in that way. Now, it's not impossible, but it certainly makes it a lot more difficult, and kind of that's what we're facing now. Part of it was the reason why I chose to do it, well, because I didn't want to pay for an ADR room and things of that nature, but also I just wanted to prove that, no matter what your resources are, you can make a movie, on a low budget and so forth, utilizing what you have. And so it goes back to the Robert Rodriguez mentality when he made El Mariachi. He kind of did it differently. A, he had very little dialogue, but two, he recorded all of his ADR in the actual rooms of where he shot certain scenes, right? So if there was a scene at a bar, the people would go through their dialogue, and then afterwards he would just record them because they were already kind of in their natural element. They were already in that performance mode, so it was a lot easier to mimic what they had already said. And I think that's a great strategy. Now, I didn't have that luxury to be able to do that. We were just kind of very like go, go, go type of thing on production days. But yeah, I think I agree. That's a very good strategy, and something worth exploring maybe for you. The other aspect of it, I've said this before, but like I'm really proud how the sound now is another element, just like color was, that elevates the film on another level. And even though we're dealing with the ADR, making sure that it matches, overall, I'm very pleased with how things are. And one of the things like especially now, we're all distanced, right? For the most part, we're all doing Zoom calls and things of that nature, Skype, Google Hangouts, whatever the case may be. And it becomes a lot of work to make things personal. But when you really take that time and effort to make things personal, you can get much more of a better result. Edgar, who is the sound designer, I found him through Upwork, and just based on how he applied for the position, I could tell that he was a very committed, very dedicated. He was going to bring ideas to the table. And what I appreciate is that he still does this. He continues to amaze me and throw me surprises in the best of ways to this day. And so him and I, while it was one thing, I felt like I basically gave him a lot of notes on the first pass, the first third of the movie. And I said, don't worry about adjusting these changes just yet, but just kind of, here's the overall takeaway, so that way you can apply it to the things moving forward. And, I also told him, just because, don't be fooled by the volume of notes that I'm giving you. I am by no means displeased with the work that you're doing, And again, that's where the idea of how far off are we? Are we 5% off or 50% off type of thing, right? And so we decided to do a video chat, so that way we could kind of just touch base and things like that. And it was good to kind of put a face to the name and so forth, and we connected. It was an overall very quick call, but nonetheless, it just humanized the process a lot more, and I truly appreciate that. And he's someone who lives in another country, and I think he's absolutely fantastic. And from what, certainly by the work that he's doing, he seems to like the movie, and so I truly appreciate that, and I'm very thankful to have him. And in fact, I'm I'm kind of looking forward to future projects because I want to have him involved. Much like Spielberg has various people that he works with continually, I want to develop that for myself. Khalil is someone that's been a part of the show multiple times, and he is someone that I want to work with continually. Courtney Stewart, Ian Kaiser, John Comerford, these are other people, right? And but they each have specific roles that they fill, and I've not had a sound designer yet, and so now I can have a sound designer. I found Joshua as far as a colorist, and I think he's fantastic. So like, in an interesting way, I'm kind of slowly building up my go-to people, and that's really cool to see. Anyway, shifting gears to the book queries. So I had finished up, another pass of my novel, and there's things to still address and things like that, but it's good enough to, essentially start mailing out to people. And that was something that Emily and I agreed. Now, Emily is the editor of my book. It's another person that I found through Upwork, another person that I started developing, a more closer relationship with. I think she's fantastic, and I really want her, to be part of many things that I do. In fact, I got her help on the outline of one of my scripts, this script I'm working on that I'll talk about in a bit, and yeah, I just can't wait for her to be continually involved in the various things that I do, because she brings so much to the table, even if like script writing isn't necessarily her expertise, but storytelling is. Anyway, her and I both felt that it was time to start creating the novel. And so I reached out to various publishers that I thought would be a good fit. And now I'm also in the process of looking up literary agents, and we'll see. And that's it's kind of a new process for me, but the good news is, like, what I love about the day and age that we live in is you can just do a Google search and how do you get a literary agent, how do you publish a novel, what are the steps that you need to take, how to write a query letter and things like that. And there are so many wonderful resources. And so I binged all that. I applied it and so forth. And we'll see. I think the people that would pick up my book, because I am like a first-time author, certainly aren't going to be like the Simon & Schuster's type of, or the HarperCollins. So they're smaller publishers and they don't put out many books. And right now, especially with the way things are going, I don't know where they're at from a business perspective, so who knows? They might pass just based on the notion that they can't take on anything else right now. And I accept that. I don't fault them for that. It just makes my life a little bit more difficult in that sense. But again, it goes back to the idea of control. What can I control? Well, I can't control the current state of book publishing, but I can control, me just asking the right questions, seeking out people, and so forth. And again, that's all you can do. Now, the beauty is that I can always self-publish, so that's always there. And kind of the other thing is also a lot of, interestingly enough, a lot of the bigger book publishers have been kind of switching more to digital, because Barnes & Noble and most like bookstores, libraries and things like that are still remaining closed. And so if they want to sell new books, most of them will have to be kind of digital for the time being. Or at least that's where they're making their shift. And so if that continues to happen, well, it's like, okay, well, it's a less of a risk for them to take on a first-time author, maybe, I imagine, versus because they don't have to print the books and so forth. So who knows how that turns out? We'll see. I don't know. It's a new adventure for me. If you have any insight into this process, especially kind of like as it stands right now, let me know. I'd be very curious. And I think that a big thing that I think is true for all facets of the industry right now is that they're looking for final products. And so my novel, while it's not a final product, it's certainly very close. And because let's take it from the movie perspective. When movie theaters open back up, whenever that may be, a lot of these studios are going to want to put movies into the theaters. Well, how do you do that if you have something that's in pre-production? You can't. So they're looking to what are final products, so that way we can put that out into the market, sell it, and so forth. And so I see a lot of my friends kind of caught in that conundrum where they're still developing projects, but it's like, no, unearth the projects that are near complete or complete that just haven't gone anywhere for you, because I think those actually now stand a good shot at being distributed. Just the thought. That's kind of how I view things currently. The last thing in terms of the creative process that I've been working on is the script. So it's kind of, the best way I can describe it currently is it's like 8.5, the movie by Fellini, meets The Prisoner by Patrick McGowan, which was a TV series. Now, that doesn't reveal much of anything. It's just kind of like the style of which I'm going for. And just because of everything, sometimes it can be very difficult to sit down and write and so forth. But, I think just in the spirit of breaking things down to their smallest accomplishable things, it's like, okay, well, let me just write a scene. Let me just work on this. I have an outline. It's numbered, and so it's like, let me at least each day just tackle a little bit. And some of the scenes are very minute. Like, you would have a scene that is literally like 1/8 of a page. If you know screenwriting, that's nothing, right? But it's like, let me just write that 1/8 of a page just to keep momentum going. Like, let that be it, and just progress forward. And so that's what I've been doing. And I think apply that in whatever context for the art form that you're creating, and just keep going in some small way. Like, show tangible results, whatever it may be. Just you can always revise it if it's crap, but just continue to make a small dent, so that way you can start to be like, okay, wow, even though I've been working on this for, let's say, whatever, 10-15 days, I've got 3 pages done. That's not bad. Okay, fine. That's better than no pages, right? And so just keep moving forward as far as anything. So that's kind of what I have for you today. Hopefully this helps in some small way, shape, or form. Hopefully it's inspiring. If you have any questions or thoughts of your own, by all means, comment down below or hit me up on social media. I'd love to hear from you at Svitek. And if you enjoy the things that I'm talking about, I do various lessons throughout the week in terms of that helps both in terms of your creativity, but also your mindset, which I believe, you can't be creative if you don't have the right mindset. Especially right now, I think that's a lot of people are not able to be creative because of what they're facing in terms of the world. And so mastering mental fortitude is equally as important as gaining the right skills and talent. So all that to say, subscribe, follow, and check out some of the various episodes that I put out there for you to help you. Thank you, and I hope to see you next time.